They have more competition in 2024, but Red Bull Racing's chief engineer Paul Monaghan believes they're still the team to beat.
We're here fighting against some automotive giants, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Williams. It seems phenomenal histories in this sport. We're relative newcomers, the fizzy drinks company on the block, if you like. We've got one of the best drivers there is around. We're going to do our own engine. We're moving forward as a team. We're well funded. We're quite stable. At the moment, this still feels like home, so why would I go anywhere else?
Red Bull has been Monaghan's home since their inception back in 2005. He's helped transform the team into history-making multiple world champions with Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen. And before that, he also set the wheels in motion for another F1 icon's success, race engineering Fernando Alonso at Renault.
We put dry tyres on his car on a damp grid in Australia. He sat there looking at the seatbelt, shaking his head, and I thought, this is a great start, isn't it? I'm thinking, oh, he's going to kill me after this. He's a pretty fierce competitor even by that point. But Australia, he overtook people all over the place on his dry tyres on the wet track, and then we ran out of fuel. It was a flipping safety car. And he came in, why am I pitching? Because you're out of fuel. Why am I out of fuel? Because you've used it all. And nothing appeased him at that point. He's thinking, this kid is competitive.
Hello everyone, Tom Clarkson here, and this is F1 Beyond the Grid. As an engineer in F1 for more than 30 years, Paul Monaghan has worked with some of the sport's most iconic teams and drivers. When it comes to Grand Prix and World Championships, he's a serial winner. During this chat, you'll hear him talk about a seat fitting with Ayrton Senna at McLaren, how working with Gerhard Berger earned him the nickname Pedals, why he felt guilty when Fernando Alonso missed out on the title with Ferrari, and the reason he thinks Sebastian Vettel lost motivation in his final year with the Bulls. Paul is now part of Red Bull's senior technical management, responsible for extracting maximum performance from their car at every race. He explains what makes Max Verstappen so quick. I also ask him how the team's two eras of dominance compare, and what it was like trying to compete with Mercedes when they won 8 constructors' titles in a row. We also discuss the impact Adrian Newey's departure will have and his expectations for Red Bull's own power units in 2026. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Paul, it's great to have you on the show. How are things?
Very well. You really ought to broaden your search pool to drag me out on a Sunday morning. New levels of desperation for you, I fear.
Well, it's Sunday morning at Silverstone, just up the road from the factory in Milton Keynes. Let's talk about the RB20, this year's car. What does it do especially well? And where is there still room for improvement, do you feel?
Well, if you consider our lap time to be currency, it's a competitive car. And we had a good start to the season, which was nice. Clearly, we're coming under a bit more pressure now. Fine, it's likely to happen. In terms of its strengths and weaknesses, I think I was asked last year what makes it so good. It has all the same problems as other cars. They may just be lesser in magnitude, and we're able to extract a little bit more lap time per corner. So they all have the same characteristics of the entry behaviour, the behaviour through the apex of the corner, and the exit stability question. Unless we were sort of allowed to go into other people's garages, debriefs and datas, then it's quite hard to judge that one. So you apply an element of subjective assessment, and I'd say our car's still got its inherent strengths from last year. The items we focused on when we set out to do this generation of car are still there, and it appears to be serving us well. Are we coming to the sort of asymptote of the rules? I don't know. There are some brilliantly clever people in Milton Keynes who will find ways of redesigning parts and making it a little bit better, and we'll see how far we push round over the coming months and into next year.
What's been the key then to unlocking performance on this current generation of ground effect car? What have you done so well?
The key words you answered in your question are ground effect. So if you're going to extract the best aerodynamic performance from your car, you have to be able to exploit the ground effect, what should we call it, freedom in the regulations. Not that there's a huge amount of that, but we are invited to have this sort of 3D shaped floor, and that will work if you can get it close to the ground, but also keep it stable. I mean, you cast your mind back to 2022 and my car's bouncing, it's doing this, it's doing that. is don't see so much of it now. There have been some regulation changes to suppress that tendency, but equally everybody in the pit lane has learned how to suppress, control, whatever you want to call it, mitigate it. Again, subjectively, I didn't think we were as bad for that in 22, 23. Now, if that is the key difference to our opposition, well, I suspect it's one of them, then maybe our understanding of that aspect of it was a little bit better entering this generation of car. And if it is, great. We enjoyed the benefits, didn't we?
Paul, I remember that the previous generation of car, up to the end of 2021, you ran a very high rake car. And I remember experts in the pit lane saying, well, Red Bull are going to find it harder than most to get used to the ground effect because, Mercedes ran a flatter car, for example. Yet you hit the ground running.
But if you come to the end of 21, everybody was operating with, as we call them, high rake cars. But even Mercedes had to push their rear ride height up. I think the regulation changes that were sort of agreed, which was some of the rear wheel furniture from memory, that pushed the rake up even on the Mercedes car. So they started to come up to be higher on rear ride height. They did a pretty good job, didn't they? They were awfully quick in 21. So the adaptation to go to ground effect, it's a completely different philosophy. Some of the lessons from 21 carried over, but much of it was a clean sheet of paper, like 2008 to 9, like 2015 to 16. I suppose that was more of an evolution of a car. 2013 into 14 were quite different philosophies. This was quite a big shake-up. And the clever people in Milton Keynes, they did a phenomenal job in the transition, didn't they?
And what about the drivers then? I mean, Max specifically, what is he doing in that car that allows him to extract so much performance from it?
Good question. You're better directing that to Max than me, probably. He's able to put the car on the limit throughout the corner is my interpretation of things. So some arrive at the corner and find the peak and then have to undershoot to get around the corner in moderate terms, because they're all pretty quick, aren't they? He's able to find the limit, overstep it by a tiny amount, undershoot by a tiny amount, and extract it that way. His resolution when he's doing a debrief is mighty impressive. You think it's all happening in slow motion, but these things are silly fast, aren't they? And he just breaks it down almost into sort of little sections of the corner. So his maybe a good summary, but his resolution of driving is quite phenomenal.
That's quite fascinating because you've worked with many great drivers, world champions, Jenson Button in the past, Fernando Alonso as well. We'll come on to those two, but do they all share that resolution that you're talking about, that ability to break it down, to ride that tightrope through the corner?
Yeah, all of them are capable of doing that. They're all pretty phenomenal talents at this point in time, isn't it? You occasionally see the odd jibe at one of the drivers and you just think, come on. If I climbed in it, I'd be pleased if I got out the pit lane. By the time the other drivers had finished laughing at me, even trying to sort of struggle out. And then the first time he showed me a corner, I'll probably park it backwards in the gravel just to prove that it is not a walk in the park. I think a lot of it is self-belief, confidence, and then that resolution to actually get hold of it in its minutiae around a corner is a huge part of it. They all have it. Do they have it to greater and lesser extents? I would assume so, but it's a bit speculative because I'm not a driver. I observe them, and goodness me, we're very lucky, aren't we, in Red Bull land? So I don't know. Maybe put the same question to Max. See what he says. He might call me an idiot.
Hydration is essential in any sport, and it becomes even more vital in high-stress, physically demanding environments such as Formula One. But you don't have to be a world-class athlete to feel the amazing benefits of hydration on physical endurance, mental clarity, and overall well-being. Liquid IV is the easiest and most convenient way to stay hydrated and feeling good, whatever the day throws at you. A single stick of Liquid IV hydrates you faster than drinking water alone. All you need to do is take your sachet, mix it up with water, and you'll get a hit of 3 times the electrolytes of a traditional sports drink. And it's bursting with vitamins and nutrients including B6, B12, vitamin C and potassium. It doesn't matter when you drink it, first thing in the morning, during your workout, or during an afternoon slump. The individual sachets make it easy to slip into your daily routine whenever you feel you need it, or take it on the road with you. And I think the best way to stay hydrated is to be consistent, and that's what makes Liquid IV's convenient on-the-go sachets so great. It also comes in 4 delicious sugar-free flavours, including white peach, green grape, raspberry melon, and lemon lime, which contain no artificial sweeteners. So, turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code GRID at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code GRID at liquidiv.com. Can we talk a little bit more about Max? You've worked with him since he's been at Red Bull, since he came and won that first race, of course, back in 2016 in Spain. How has he evolved during the time you've known him?
I remember that first race quite clearly. That wasn't that the one where Nico and Lewis bumped into one another between turn 3 and 4? And you sort of watch that evolve and you think, oh my goodness me, this could be fortunate. Right, missed the debris. All right, we're underway now. Here we go. My impressions of that first race, what a cool customer. Goodness me. No pressure phased him, did it? I think he had Kimi breathing down his neck in the last few races, or the last few laps, sorry. If I recall correctly, he was just using the overtake to keep the K deployment going down the straights and then topping the battery up elsewhere around the lap. Mighty impressive for his first race with us. And Daniel's no fool, is he? And he pushed Daniel quite hard. Speculatively, I think Daniel benefited from having him around because it forced him to push himself a bit harder. But in terms of Max himself, you began to see underneath that sort of quite relaxed exterior is a phenomenal inner strength. There's a sort of mythical armour, if you like. Not much is going to derail him. His confidence has built. He's, I think, driving with a great deal more assuredness now than, say, 21. Yeah, we got tangled up with Lewis a few times, didn't we? Now, nothing much phases him, does it? So I suppose the evolution you're asking about is gone from someone who had an expectation, a belief and a confidence to someone who has realised that expectation and is now one of the very best we'll see, I suspect.
And so when he gets criticism, let's say after Austria last weekend, and a lot of the pundits saying, Max has regressed to how he used to be in the early years. Is that water off a duck's back to him?
He has a rational explanation for what happened. He realises that he's in the heat of the moment, which I think is a pretty cool customer to do. He even said himself that, I'm still, this is still quite recent to the events. And he offered his view of things, and you think, actually, he's thought about this an awful lot, hasn't he? He's rationalised how it all happened. That steely determination will come through as a defence or an attack. Other people have to be prepared for that level of defence or attack, and he is more than aware of the regulations in which drivers can engage on the track. And as far as he was concerned, he defended him in an acceptable manner. Other people saw it differently. He and Lando sound like they've cleared the air, which is excellent for the sport, isn't it, going forward? Long may it continue into the upcoming races, as long as we win it.
He's had, at the time of us speaking now, 61 wins, 40 poles. Is he a better qualifier or racer?
I'll answer your question by giving you an example to a different driver. In Canada a few years ago, when Fernando drove for McLaren, he had a 300th or 400th race ceremony. I can't remember. He's done millions of them now, hasn't he? I was privileged to be invited along, and the compere said to him, do you want to be regarded as the best driver? And he said, I'm not the best, but I qualify well, I race well, and I try to do everything well. And I think I'm pretty good at all of it. And he's right, he is. I don't really see a weakness in Max either. He can race and he can qualify. So is he better at one or the other? I wouldn't know how to actually objectively or subjectively answer your question. What a track record, though, isn't it? It's quite impressive.
Amazing track record. But, okay, can I ask you to pick a best win for Max? I mean, as an observer looking from the outside in, I thought Imola 2024 looked spectacular from his point of view. Does anything top that in your mind?
I was trying to think that there are races where he has passed people to win, and the races he's defended. So your example of Imola is phenomenal. I would take you back to Miami 23. He spun on his first Q lap in qualifying 3, or went off. He won't say spin, he doesn't. Something went wrong. It was clearly not his fault, it was our fault. We let him down somewhere. And then, if I recall correctly, Charles caused a red flag or a yellow flag in the second run of Q3. Checo was on pole. Max was P9? By lap 15, he's sitting in Checo's boot or something like that, isn't he? That, I thought, was a pretty assured drive. So he passed a few people, looked after his tyres, caught his teammate, who was driving well, stuck it on pole in Miami, and made it look quite straightforward, didn't he? I thought that, for a race where he had to pass people, look after tyres and all sorts, was pretty incredible. If you look at Spa 22, he was gone, wasn't he? Absolutely gone. And he didn't put a foot wrong. He could have just lost his concentration. No, he doesn't lose his concentration.
Is he talkative on the radio? Does he have that spare capacity to think about everything going on in the race as well as what he's doing? I refer
you to Spain 22 when the DRS wouldn't open reliably. Go and have a listen to that radio. Goodness me, you can speak on the radio, okay. The capacity's there, don't you worry about that. Yes, he will offer you an insight into what is going on, regardless of the situation.
And Paul, in terms of his qualifying, there's one almost lap, that I wanted to ask you about, and that is Saudi Arabia 21. Do you remember? He was on fire and then just kissed the wall on the exit of the last corner.
Yes, I remember that. Vivid worry of what on earth do we do with the gearbox?
But up until that moment of contact, was that the finest qualifying almost lap that you'd ever seen?
I wouldn't know how to answer that question. Did Checo take pole there in 22 or 23? I can't remember. That was a pretty spectacular lap. S2 or S3 was lit, wasn't it, with our car of the time. Checo himself said that was a phenomenal lap. Max has had some pretty phenomenal laps. If he was sat here, he might have a different view of what's his finest qualifying lap. Up to the point he hit the wall, it doesn't
were you
really
enjoying it?
It doesn't really matter,
no,
does
I knew
it?
you were going to say that, but were you enjoying it up until the moment he hit the wall?
Oh, of course you are. He's set 2 pinks, hadn't he? Or he was pink and green, something like that. So I think he was 3/10 up coming out that last corner. You think, come on, keep it together. Boom. Oh, no. Now what do we do?
The car looked like it was dancing around the lap, I remember thinking.
Until it pirouetted into the wall, I suppose. It didn't pirouette, did it? He's a phenomenal talent, isn't he, Max? And there's no doubt about it. And I wouldn't say that in a detrimental way to Checo. He keeps Max honest. And occasionally, Alex would keep him honest as well. Austria 20, I think Alex was heading for the lead of the race. Had a little bump with Lewis, didn't he? But Max tends to put himself in a situation where he gets what he wants out of a race. It was Zandvoort last year, wet, dry. Who comes out 1 and 2? Wasn't it Max and Fernando? Everybody else is in walls and gravel and all sorts, and those two emerge.
Can we talk about being Max's teammate now? So the gap between Max and Checo has been, I think, on average in qualifying about half a second over these 3.5 seasons. Is that an accurate reflection of where they're at, or have there been extenuating circumstances for Checo?
I wouldn't want to be rude to Checo, and he may well bite my head off if he was sat here, but I'd say, in general, I'd say Max is a little bit quicker than Checo. I don't think there's anything... For me, that's not a controversial statement. Checo may well be most upset with me. Half a second on average? Okay, let's say most circuits have, pick a number, 20 corners, because it makes the maths easy, doesn't it? Look at that as an increment per corner. It is minute, the difference, isn't it, per corner? Maybe he pulls half a tenth in one corner. It borders on trivial, doesn't it? Yet it adds up through a lap, doesn't it? Just it gets that little bit more. Go back to what I was saying earlier. He gets to the limit and stays that little bit closer to it and doesn't massively overstep it in qualifying when you overdrive the thing. If that's the difference, then the average comes out as a number at the end. If that's the objective measurement, so be it. I think there's a little bit more to it, perhaps, but he's pretty good, isn't he?
Do you think if you're someone like Max's teammate, and equally if you're Fernando Alonso's teammate, or in the past Michael Schumacher's teammate, does it require a different mentality in that as soon as you accept how good they are, and take perhaps a little bit of pressure off your shoulders, does the performance then improve?
If it helps you get the most out of yourself, again, I'm speaking on behalf of the drivers now, then intuitively it makes sense, doesn't it? If they are constantly worrying of a comparison with a teammate or what their teammate is doing, and they fail to get the best out of themselves and their car with their engineers, then yes, it's been of detriment. What you have to be prepared for is, it's true of, in my opinion, of both Max and Fernando, is this relentless pursuit of the best they can be. And that is every day, every session, every lap. You know, even if you lose one session, they're back the next one and they are on it. And you have to be prepared for that. They do not have a bad day, do not have a bad session. Well, they do on occasions, but they won't admit it. It's fine. If you're prepared for that and you can stand that, then it's a bit like Kipling's If poem, isn't it? But again, that comes back to the inner strength of the teammate. He has to get out of himself his best, and then has to stand the judgment.
Seems to me that Max's relentlessness continues off track as much as on it, and particularly all the sim racing he does. And you've observed him now for quite a few years, do you think that sim racing makes him a better racing driver in reality?
If it serves him to turn up at a race weekend such as this and get the best out of himself, then yes.
But is a race start, whether you're doing a virtual start or a start in reality, it's still a start?
If it takes him through the mental process to prepare himself for a weekend such as this, or if he finds it a really nice way to relax and enjoy himself between these rather intense events, serves him well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then at Imola, you can just mash it all together and do a 24-hour sim race at the Nürburgring and win at Imola as well. Did you have any reservations about him doing both that weekend?
No, personally not. No, I think his discipline has been demonstrated over the years, hasn't it? I mean, last year he didn't put a foot wrong, did he? Year before didn't put a foot wrong. Year before rarely made mistakes. So I don't control him. I wouldn't want to try and control him. That would have been like trying to put your hand in the lion's cage, hoping you don't get bitten, wouldn't it? So he knows what he's got to do when he comes to a race weekend like this. If it would compromise it, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't do it.
We all know that being a sports fan can be a real roller coaster, especially when you're so invested, but your team just doesn't live up to the hype. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's a bit like when you buy something that you think is going to be amazing, but then it totally lets you down. Take Harry's, for example. They were sick of seeing the shaving industry bombard people with overpriced, underperforming products. So they decided to change the game with razors that look and feel great and cost a fraction of what the big brands charge. And as a result of their dedication, Harry's now has the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry. And let me tell you why. Their German-engineered blades, made in their own factory, stay sharper for longer than any I've used before, giving you the cleanest, most comfortable shave out there. It honestly just glides across the skin, and if you want to try out one of their kits like I have, you can get your hands on a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for just $3 at harrys.com/grid. I've never really paid attention to the handle on my razors until I started using Harry's weighted ones. Don't ask me how it works because I don't know. All I can tell you is that it makes such a difference to the control you have while shaving, especially in those tricky parts under your chin and on your neck. And that foaming shave gel smells really good. It just takes the whole experience up a notch. And they've also got some beautiful stone, redwood and wildlands scented body washes that leave your skin silky smooth and a whole host of top quality hair and other grooming products to explore. Get more performance out of your shave with Harry's. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/grid. That's harrys.com/grid for a $3 trial set. Now, Paul, you've been at Red Bull since the beginning, and that means that you've experienced 2 periods of domination. There was the first from 2010 to 2013, 40 wins, and then, of course, there's what's happened over the last few years with Max and Checo. How different have those 2 periods been for you in the garage?
From a personal point of view, 9 through to 13 was more intense for me. 2010, that was a pretty strong competition all the way through. 11, if I recall correctly, Seb wrapped up a title around about Japanish, or we got the Constructors' title Japan. Again, we pushed ourselves really hard from within, and we were very blessed in that the titles came relatively early in the season, which then takes a little bit of pressure off, except Adrian was still fairly intense about matters. 12, I think we again got ourselves in a bit of a punch-up with everybody, didn't we?
Fernando.
Funny that. And that was pretty full-on all the way through the year. 2012, oh yes, last race was in Brazil, wasn't it? Rolling down the track backwards between turns 3 and 4 with half the car missing. I think, my goodness me, what are we doing? Come on, why are we in this mess? What on earth are we going to do now to keep this thing going and try and keep it competitive? He pulled up in the pits, half the floor's missing, a chunk out the bodywork, the exhaust got a dent in it. Oh my word, okay. Well, this is going to be fun to keep going, isn't it? And we did, somehow. And Seb did his bit. And 13 was, again, a little bit more comfortable towards the end of the season, the last few, because the titles were wrapped up. But there's still this drive that when you're in the chance of winning races, you don't let them slip through your fingers. So for me personally, even 9 from Monaco, we tried to get the first version double diffuser on the car, and it was a full-on square peg in a round hole. It didn't want to fit whichever way we tried to get the thing in. So that you go to the circuit Wednesday morning, you go home Thursday night, and you say, oh my word, that was fun. I fell asleep in the debrief Thursday night, so I just got up and walked out. I was absolutely shattered. That paved the way into Silverstone, and then Seb chasing Jensen down. We just ran our races to catch him. So that period was pretty intense, but I'd say the sport has changed a little bit. We were quite free then, weren't we? 2009 to 10 was double diffuser era. Ban that. Right, we're going to do it with exhausts. And we had our, what we call them, cricket bat exhausts. This sort of nice, long, oval-shaped pressure vessel which refused to behave itself, burnt its way through the floor, did whatever you didn't want it to do. And you're trying to run the engine with as much gas flow in it as you can, because it's generating you downforce, isn't it? So the last thing you do when you shut the throttle pedal is to shut the throttles. You were really in a different discipline for the period of 2011, and we went to the, what were they called, Coanda things in the end, weren't they? Sort of side pod exhaust, got all the same features out of it in the end. Then you had hot blowing and cold blowing on the overrun, people firing engines, not firing engines on the overrun. So if we fired the engine on the overrun, Renault would generally get upset and we'd burn all our bodywork. So it was never quiet. The challenges evolved. I mean, it was here 2011, there was going to be the fuss about the legality of engines, wasn't it? Sunday morning, I remember traipsing round trying to get signatures on a thing to say we won't protest each other, and we'll just run to the end of the year and just simply observe one of the TDs that had appeared. It all seemed to sort of pan out in the end, but it wasn't exactly a clear process at the time.
As an engineer, did you enjoy that era of pushing boundaries?
Absolutely phenomenal. I was privileged to be around in it. It was a phenomenal drive through that era. I think Pierre joined us in 12, didn't he? So he sort of added his view into the mix as well and began to enlighten us as to other ways of looking at things. If you looked each year, we almost had a different discipline, didn't we? And it was phenomenal to go through F-duct in 2010, trying to get that thing to work. Normally you think carbon makes good pressure vessels. This was a negative pressure vessel. So, with this sort of rectangular tube ran down the top, but it pinched in to be nothing in the middle under a slight vacuum. All the things we had fun getting involved in, just thinking aloud now. As my failing memory starts to work again.
And as the regs have got more restrictive, how has your job as chief engineer changed? I mean, the challenge is still there, clearly, but is it just all in the detail now? No,
it's evolved and changed. It's a very different power unit from 2009 through to 13. And if I look at 14 and 15 and 16, poor Renault struggled a little bit, didn't they? And we were quite vocal about it at times, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
1 or 2 run-ins with Remy and Thierry and co. I hope they look back and think we did it in the interests of the team and their engine, but I don't suppose they look back upon it very fondly with my occasional complaints.
Can I ask you a question about what I refer to as the barren years for Red Bull, that sort of 14, 15, 16.
Excuse me, who won 2 races in 2014
I know, but
amidst the Mercedes dominance? Well, I think you'll find it was Daniel. He burst the office door open on Sunday morning in Canada, and he said, "Are you ready to some up?" That was the opening gambit from Daniel Sunday morning in Canada. It is vivid. It's one of the best things ever. He was on a proper roll that year, wasn't he?
And he won. Yeah.
And morning, Daniel. How are you? And and he called us all something rude, and off he went. What a drive.
Yeah.
They lost their MGU case, didn't they? And he was around and he did his bit. So the barren years, well, some other people, how barren their years were.
Well,
see how you get on.
But this actually backs up what I'm about to ask, in that clearly the car was good, but as you've sort of alluded to, perhaps the Renault wasn't as good as some of the rivals, particularly the Mercedes. If you'd been running a Mercedes power unit in what I've just called the barren years, do you think you would have challenged for the World Championship?
It's fair to say, and without being disrespectful to the people from Renault, they worked damn hard for us and pushed themselves hard. We would have been more competitive. Could we have challenged the Mercedes? If Mr. Allison were here, he'd say it was wishful thinking. I'm sat here saying, yeah, we'd have challenged for it. Would we have won it? Who knows? We would have been in the mix, and it would have been a lot closer. Would Sebastian have stayed? Don't know. Yeah, he lost his motivation with us a bit, didn't he? And
is that how you look back at 2014 when Daniel came into the team and did beat Seb?
Yeah, Seb was a 4-time world champion.
Yeah.
And he was so committed, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I saw him after the final race in 9 when he lost the championship, and there was a man devastated. He really had to work hard to pick himself up. His world fell apart. You think, okay, he's this pretty serious commitment here. He was phenomenal thereafter, wasn't he? But 2014, we didn't give him a car that he could defend his world championship with. And I think he lost his motivation. Daniel ascended to be our more competitive driver in that period. Seb made a choice and off he went. Thank you very much for the years you gave us, and good luck at Ferrari, mate. We won races and benefited from others making mistakes in 14 rather than being competitive every weekend. Put a Merc engine in the back, yes, we'd probably been a lot quicker, a lot closer. Maybe we will, maybe we wouldn't. Who knows?
So what was your take on the move to Honda? Because they'd struggled when they first came back in 2015 with McLaren.
I would argue we weren't going to win a world championship with a Renault engine in the back, given the level that Mercedes and Ferrari were reaching. That's my personal view of it. Changing to Honda, if it gave us the opportunity to have a better power unit in the back than perhaps Renault could have supplied us, brilliant. We did the right thing, didn't we? Upon reflection, as you look back, Honda did a phenomenal job and pulled themselves and ourselves into a competitive situation. 19, 20, and ultimately 21, we finally toppled the Mercedes dominance, albeit in one of the titles. So, is it a gamble? It depends on what you're aiming to do. If you're aiming to be competitive, win the odd race, be somewhere near the front, we just changed power unit, didn't we? If your aim was to take some risk at the chance of a greater reward, personally, I'll do that every time, because it took us to a place we weren't going to get to otherwise, in my opinion.
I feel like I'm talking to Ron Dennis at this moment, because Ron always used to say you can't win the World Championship with a customer engine.
Oh, well, we'll look back at 2010, 11, 12, 13 then. Well, Renault engine wasn't ours, was it? We might have been Works team, I suppose, but ultimately it was a customer deal, wasn't it? And we did. Anyway, it doesn't matter here nor there. There are different views. So the switch to Honda, I would have done it, yes. Looking back, okay, we all look back now with great fondness of it. Is it a risk at the time? Of course it is, but it was the right thing to do at the time, in my opinion, for the reasons I've offered you. And, they're an amazing bunch, aren't they?
Learning a new language can open the door to so many opportunities in life. Connections with other people, cultures, and even career progression. And if you're at the point where you want to expand your horizons and need your vocabulary to expand with it, Babbel can help you learn a new language or improve your English in as little as 10 minutes a day. Traditional methods like sourcing language tutors and opportunities to practice your skills can be a little pricey, not to mention how difficult it can be to fit it into your already busy schedule. But with the Babbel app, you'll feel like you've got a personal language coach in your pocket, offering you feedback and progress trackers to keep you motivated, and you can do it all on your own schedule. It's also available online, and any progress you make will be synced across all devices, so you can simply pick up right where you left off at any time. There are 14 different languages to choose from, including French, Spanish, Italian, and German. And the lessons are complemented by cultural insights to make language learning a fun and enriching journey. The Babbel method places a huge focus on everyday conversations, with lessons built up to help you start and engage in real-life dialogues and build your confidence before you test drive it in the real world. And right now, Babbel is offering our listeners 6 months free with a purchase of a 6-month subscription. Choose between one and all available languages. Go to babbel.com/BTG for more information on the offer. That's Babbel, BABBEL.com/BTG to pay for 6 months and learn for a whole year. Valid for a limited time only. Babbel, language learning that works. You came into Formula One back in 1990 with McLaren Honda. Of course, Formula One was very different back then. The engines were very different, normally aspirated, I think V10s they were using at the time. But is it still the same Honda? Can you see the same approach from 30 years ago to today?
I see many parallels, yes. I inadvertently, I crossed paths with Tanabe-san, didn't I? He was Gerhard's engine engineer in 1991, 92. So it was nice to work with the people I'd worked with then. I probably thought I was a complete idiot with the faxes I used to send them, but sorry. The relentless drive to improve is still there. I remember in 92, it was a slightly reluctant car compared with the 91. We changed the V-angle of the Honda engine from memory, and almost bi-weekly from Japan arrived an engine update. And you think, Benel, this is getting quite serious. It was getting lighter, a little bit more power, slight revision of this, slight revision of that. And you think, from the other side of the world, that is mightily impressive. We were up against a fairly strong package in the Williams Renault. Ford were making progress in the Benetton car all the time. Yes, there was an update every week. And you see that, okay, we may be currently we're in a fixed engine formula, aren't we? And we have a limited number per season, so once it's in the pool, it's kind of a done deal. But in terms of operating it and the relentless pursuit and not leaving anything unresolved and seeking every ounce that we can get out of it, that's Honda's way, isn't it?
And we've talked already about technical freedom that you had even 10 years ago. I'm guessing back in 1990, it was like a completely different formula compared to now.
Well, don't forget, I was sort of almost fresh out of uni, so this was quite a new world to me. So that level of freedom was not entirely clear to me as I see it now. You know, when we've lived through, I've had many years in the sport and very lucky to enjoy it and work with people so much cleverer than I. It's quite humbling. You know, at that point, I didn't realise just what the freedoms were in the sport. I would draw pedals one week, gear levers, steering wheel, steering column, radiators, oil tanks, all sorts of things we would shuffle around during those years. I remember at 93, Martin came out, Martin didn't come to see me, I was summoned to see him. Said, have you booked any holiday at them? No, you're not. You're putting a Lamborghini engine in the back of the car for a test at the end of the season. Okay, off I go. I'm putting a Lamborghini engine in. That was, I don't appreciate now the freedom we had. I look back upon it and think, wow, that was brilliant fun, wasn't it?
Brilliant fun, and what a great grounding for you as well as an engineer.
Oh, it was phenomenal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Some such clever people that carried me through many years. Sort of Matthew Neal, Dave Nielsen, Dave North, Bob Bell. Mike Gascoigne was there when I first got there. Henri then came in. It's phenomenal, wonderful people. Steve Nichols then appeared slightly later on and gave a different perspective again. And midway through 97, Adrian arrives. Yeah, you're in a pretty elite university. And I didn't think I sort of made par on any particular day, but survived.
And of course, you got to work with two great drivers, Senna and Berger back then. And I must just ask you, within the team, almost within the paddock, of course, you are Paul, but you're also known as Pedals.
Mm-hmm. I should have been christened that, really. It would just hold a lot of debate, wouldn't it?
But tell us the story. Why Pedals? Because I think it was coined back then.
I must take you back to your opening gambit. I worked with Ayrton and Gerhard. No, they tolerated me and all my inadequacies and failings. So the very first seat fit I did was Ayrton in God, I don't know, February 91, I think. Saturday morning, Neil Oatley came into me at my sort of drawing board and said, oh, there's a seat fit going on. Can you go and look after it? Okay, gather up all the rubbish I thought I'd need for a seat fit, traipsed down. There's Ayrton sat in the car on his own. Introduced myself and asked him if he fitted. And Ron came in. I was dismissed like tumbleweed. It was brilliant.
Can I ask you about that seat fit? Everything I've read and heard about him it was all in the detail. So I would imagine the seat had to be absolutely perfect. Is that
You
the
make
case?
one and that was it. Once it was right, and we didn't touch it.
For the rest of the season?
Yeah, apparently I got him in a very good mood as well, so I was extremely privileged. I always found him, to the point, courteous, thoughtful. I never saw anything else. Gerhard was a little more jovial, but equally, when something wasn't right, I was left in no uncertain terms of my standing in his view, and that I was a fool. So, the nickname Pedals came from the fact I was doing 3 a week for him. Throttle, brake, clutch, move it around, change this, change that. He wanted to put the throttle in the middle at one point. Oh, gosh, this could be quite entertaining, couldn't it?
So what were his issues with the pedals? He's a tall guy.
Ultimately, they were all a bit too close to him. So when we shoved them all down the car during 91, moved the pivot forward and got better arcs, basically his heels were so close to the pivot, it's like they were falling downhill for him. So we shoveled the pivot forward and problems sort of went away. But he was fighting the fact that ergonomically I hadn't done a particularly good job of putting him in the car. And when I sort of, after umpteen months of going at it, what a fool, then, we sort of found a better way to do it, and the complaints, didn't cease, but they certainly reduced in frequency, thank goodness. Quite a relief.
Now, you mentioned a minute ago that, of course, it was while you were at McLaren that you first worked with Adrian Newey. He comes there in 97. You've probably worked with him almost longer than anybody else. How would you describe Adrian's genius?
Good understanding of engineering from its principles and how you apply those principles. So when you break it down, you take on this immense problem, you break it down into little pieces. His ability to break it down into little pieces, apply logic which was hard to diffuse or dispute at times, and then put together a sequence of those simple explanations, or relatively simple, was phenomenal. It is phenomenal. So if you look at it from that point of view, a very good engineer, because he would understand a problem by breaking it down, and then the logic applied to assemble the answer was usually sound to the point. You might contribute, you might alter. I rarely clashed with what he wanted to do. Others may have chosen to take a different course with it, but that's how I view Adrian as an engineer.
Not an aerodynamist.
That's standard, my goodness me. But it's true of whether it's aerodynamics, whether it's mechanical engineering, or whatever part of it you want to apply, the same process seems to apply. I would aspire to be that good, but oh well, never mind.
He's off to pastures new. How big a loss is he?
For me personally, it's a big loss because I enjoyed enormously working with him. And I always enjoyed his amalgamation of the skills of the team as he sought to draw from everything. No idea had to be his. He just wanted the car to be the best it could be. And that relentless pursuit of it, wherever the ideas came from, wherever the thought, the idea, that whether it's problem solving, new design, didn't matter. If it made it better, he would sponsor it, if you like, for want of a better description. So from a personal point of view, I think it's a bit sad, but as you say, he wants something different, and I hope I wasn't I contributed to that, so be it. In his wake, we've got some brilliantly talented people. Working with Pierre's fun, it's enjoyable. That's the way we're going forward, and so be it. So we're still a close-knit team.
There's been quite a lot of noise off track about Red Bull this year. I did want to ask, how has it affected people in the garage?
I haven't spoken to anybody particularly about it. Once we're in our enclave, whether it's in Milton Keynes, designing, making, building parts, evolving ourselves, or once we're here in the intensity of a competition, no difference for me. We're here fighting against 9 other teams, some automotive giants, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren teams, Williams, teams with phenomenal histories in this sport. We're relative newcomers, the fizzy drinks company on the block, if you like. And we're here to stand on our own 2 feet and compete with those guys. That requires for someone of my mediocre talents, all the effort I've got and all the strength I've got, and anything else just doesn't get into my bubble particularly. So it's competition after competition after competition. Get the car ready. We're doing this. We're changing this. We can do this. Got any new parts? Yes. Okay. Are they ready? Yes. Okay. Let's go. So for me, hasn't changed a single thing.
Yeah, and equally, there's been a lot of noise around Max. He's been courted by other teams.
I'm not surprised.
And do you feel, but his interactions with you, with the people in the garage?
Basis, from what I see in the debriefs, unaltered.
Yeah.
So we're just very lucky, aren't we?
Very lucky. And of course, you have just signed again with the team.
It was a moment of weakness on Christian Pierre's part, wasn't it?
But,
moments of weakness, sorry, plural of you, and had more than one person. Honestly, English, I should learn it, shouldn't
but Paul, you would only do that if you felt, had belief in the future of the team.
Absolutely. We're doing our own engine now.
How big a task is that?
Oh, it's immense. If ever you're allowed in to see the facility that is being, it's largely created, evolving, and the work that's going on there, the people that are in there, the dedication, it's phenomenal. And don't forget, from a personal point of view, we started perhaps a little late because other people have got experience of these engines going forward. So Honda, Mercedes, Ferrari, and the V6 is a little changed in its architecture, but not necessarily the lessons are ones you can ignore. So everybody meeting powertrains, they're enthusiastic, they're welcoming, they are nice people to interact with, they seem pretty smart, they're clued up in their areas, and we're doing our own one. No longer are we at the whim of a manufacturer or anything like that. We're going to stand on our own 2 feet and be independent. Oh, wonderful opportunity that is. And you think, wow, we're going to do our own one. We're going to go and run our own engine. Okay, well, man.
Your enthusiasm for that is palpable. You're smiling. There's
It's an amazing challenge, isn't it? Here we go, into a new era of car. I might not like the regulations as presented at the moment, and part of my responsibility is to try and improve things for us in that respect, and I'll do everything I possibly can. But yeah, we've got one of the best drivers there is around. We're going to do our own engine, okay? We're moving forward as a team. We're well funded. We're quite stable. At the moment, this still feels like home, so why would I go anywhere else?
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing however you ka-ching. Shopify is the global platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. It doesn't matter if you're selling custom clothing or personalized prints. They help you sell everywhere with their all-in-one e-commerce platform and in-person POS system. And what's great is that it gives you complete control over your brand, allowing you to customize your online store to suit your style with gorgeous, flexible templates and powerful tools. Tools like Shopify Magic, the AI-powered all-star that can help you conjure up captivating content and sell more with less effort. In fact, Shopify holds the record for the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, helping you turn browsers into buyers like nobody else. It currently powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US and is the global force behind Allbirds, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. And their award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. And everything you need to reach your goals is waiting for you. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/beyondthegrid, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/beyondthegrid now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/beyondthegrid. Paul, it has been brilliant to chat. I'm going to put you on the spot now. I'd love to have talked to you more about some of...
You must be bored by now. Everybody else doesn't talk to me for more than about
Paul,
30 seconds.
So, of all the, it was McLaren, then you went to Renault, and then effectively straight to Red Bull. But you have worked with so many phenomenal people in your career. Drivers, I'm thinking Jenson Button, Fernando Alonso, Seb Vettel, Max Verstappen,
DC.
and others. DC.
Mika
Hakkinen, Ayrton Senna.
I think I worked against Gerhard, didn't I, by the way he treated me at times, but,
But look,
there you go.
if you were putting together your own team, Monaghan Grand Prix, can you pick 2 drivers for me of the ones you've worked with?
Gosh, I'm going to upset a few people here, aren't I?
The ones you've worked with. Who would drive your cars?
We're going to do 5 or 6 cars now, aren't we, to not have a politically incorrect moment or something that people say to me, well, you didn't pick me. It's a bit like doing the football sides at school, isn't it? And I'll take them, you take them. Gosh. DC for his joviality, his sense of right and wrong, his ability to bounce back. Just fabulous fun to work with. Goodness me, there was never a dull moment. And we had some fun. Mika, what a phenomenal driver. Jensen, again, we eventually saw him. If I had to pick 2, I'm going to go with 3 and then make a decision later on. Mika, Fernando, and Max.
So Mika,
that's quite a lineup, isn't it?
That is an amazing lineup. But Mika, for his 1 lap pace, is that what stood out?
No, Mika was. You look at 98. What a season he had, didn't he? So we're in Barcelona at the pre-season test. DC's ill. Mika is, I don't know, lounging around in Monaco somewhere. So we have to scrabble him in. He turns up, puts his suit on. From memory, everybody else is in 23s and 24s, and he's something like 22.5 straight off, even in the 21s. And we had a lot of fuel in the car, and we put some more in it, put a new set of tyres on. He does 21.5. We're 2-3 seconds clear of everybody at that point. And Mika, I think he was smart enough to suddenly realise he had a shot at it. His knowledge of the car deepened. He knew the setup he'd had previous week. Rear springs, he ran all sorts of things. That car always seemed to settle on 1 set of rear springs from memory as well. I saw a difference from Mika being, I won't say casually interested, but went from being a good racing driver to a phenomenal racing driver. And he was pretty quick that year, wasn't he? He stood up to Michael and really gave him a good fight. And I thought it was a bit of a shame. I was elated at the time when the Ferrari, I think it boiled its fuel in the collector on the grid in Suzuka, didn't it, to push it off. It's like, we're in. And the thing kept going, which was a relief. He was an amazing driver. And DC, on his moments, held a flag to Mika. And that's a phenomenal statement of his talent as well. We had some good run-ins with him. Spa 99, bang front wheels down to turn 1.
Manicure 2000.
Yeah.
Great race. But what about Alonso? We haven't spoken much yet about Alonso.
My fierce little Spanish friend. He probably wouldn't call me a friend at the moment, would he?
But you were race engineering him when he won his first Grand Prix in 2003 in Hungary.
We were on pole in Malaysia. Do you believe that? 2 weeks earlier, or a week earlier, he was sat in the grid. We put dry tyres on his car on a damp grid in Australia. And he sat there looking at the seatbelt, shaking his head. And I thought, this is a great start, isn't it? I'm thinking, God, he's going to kill me after this. He's a pretty fierce competitor even by that point. We did a pre-season test of him in December. So it's the end of 2002. We'd got some different geometries on the car at the end of the day, and he a couple of new sets of tyres for him to assess them. His lap times were pretty sensational. And here's this 20-year-old kid came in on the radio and said, the changes you did, no, I didn't make a lot of difference. The rest was me. I just pushed a bit harder. I tried there and there, and it seemed to work. Okay, this is going to be an interesting ride, isn't it? This kid's he's very opinionated. We'll see if he's usually right. Goodness me, he was. But Australia, he overtook people all over the place on his dry tyres on the wet track. And then we ran out of fuel. It was a flipping safety car. And he came in, why am I pitching? Because you're out of fuel. Why am I out of fuel? Because you've used it all. And nothing appeased him at that point. He's thinking, this kid is competitive. Malaysia, he stuck it on pole and was third. He couldn't see his gain near the end. He was sweating a bit into his crash helmet. He couldn't read the pit board. It's just phenomenal times with him.
So it probably wasn't a surprise to you, because of course you left Renault to come to Red Bull, but you knew that he was world championship material from your time together.
He was so calm. A race win was just an automatic event.
So Paul, one of the great mysteries of the last 20 years, for me, is how Fernando Alonso has only won 2 world titles. How do you explain that?
Should have signed for Red Bull in 2008, shouldn't he? Ask him about that. I'm not sure you have a polite answer.
He did. He had a knack for being in the right place at the wrong time.
He is a competitive driver. He wants the best out of himself every day. As I said, he doesn't have a bad day. He doesn't have a bad session. He's a phenomenal competitor. His confidence is unshakable. He's a wonderful person to be around. I enjoy his company enormously, and the reciprocal may hate mine. He got close in 2010. He was nearly a Ferrari world champion. I saw him the Sunday night of Abu Dhabi, and that was it was a double-edged sword. You know, Seb had won his first world title with Red Bull, and I saw Fernando on the Sunday night, and I was sort of pleased that I was in the team that had won, and pleased for Seb, and yet I was sorry for Fernando. And he was sat there with his little entourage mopping up the mess. I just went over and said, "Look, good year, well done. Shame he didn't get it." Yeah, personally, I feel a little bit guilty. And there are no hard feelings. And 2012, he pushed us damn hard again, didn't he? And we clung on by our fingernails. It was nice to compete with him, and then you realise you need everything you've got to compete with him, as he's fairly phenomenal. And somehow we prevailed. So in many ways, I feel a little bit guilty about it. But in other ways, I'm competing against him. And it's a privilege to compete with someone of that calibre and that talent.
Brilliant. And we've discussed Max already. So, Mika, Fernando, Max, we're not running 3-car teams. It has been discussed in the past, but we're 2-car teams.
I've probably left Ayrton out as well, haven't I? Although I was just a boy who drew the pedals at this point, wasn't I? And I managed to get them in, throttle on the right, clutch on the left. And I didn't put idler gear in the steering to make it go the wrong way. So I'm running 2 teams, 4 cars. I've got Ayrton, Mika, Fernando, and Max. There you go. And that's as far as I'm going to resolve it, because I don't know how to resolve it.
It's the Red Bull model.
Yeah, but who's going to be in V-car? That'd be a scene, isn't it?
Paul, it's been absolutely brilliant to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. I know you've got to go and prepare for the British Grand Prix. Can I quickly end on our quickfire questions? I ask them to everybody. What else are you good at?
I'm not good at anything, so as a simple answer, nothing. I like playing tennis, I'm rubbish. I like skiing, I'm English. There's one of our wonderful catering staff is a ski instructor. She is a good skier. Had a lesson with her, failed to keep up. So, talent 0. I can't drive a kart either. I own one and I'm rubbish in it. It's hilarious. So, no talent.
Which racing person, dead or alive, would you want to be stuck in a lift with?
Good question. Checo, because I would argue eternally about football. He's made his choices, they're all wrong. Game over.
Who would play you in a film?
The unluckiest person on the planet. Get the worst role in the world. There you go. Next.
Who is the coolest person in your contacts?
I'm glad you didn't use the word friends. Apparently I don't have any. That was one of the greatest compliments the mechanics paid me in Korea, where I made them change the fuel tank, as we had some difficulties with it. And we worked quite late, so we got into the minibus, and the number 1 mechanic, who is now Aston Martin, said to me, "Pedals, if you were on Facebook, you'd have no mates and no likes." To which I said, "That's the greatest compliment you can pay me. Now, come on, let's go." So, coolest person in my contacts, all of them, because they're all my friends, even though I don't have any.
Final one. If you hosted a podcast, who would be your first guest?
I would ask lots of people and then see who I got. I would actually ask a good friend of mine called Daniela February if she and Debbie Jevons, who is now chairperson of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club, whether they would do it with me, because I would get such a battering. And that's an answer you probably didn't expect. So there you go.
Brilliant. Paul, thank you very, very much for your time.
My pleasure. You really do need to get out more, don't you?
You're right, Paul. I wasn't expecting that answer. But there was a lot in this podcast that I wasn't expecting, and that's what made it such an enjoyable conversation. Paul's explanation of what makes Max so fast was fascinating, although his analysis of all the drivers he's worked with was interesting. Ayrton, Mika, Fernando and Max. Imagine having worked with all 4 of those drivers. What a privilege. And it was a privilege to have you on the show, Paul. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you at a race again soon. So what did you think of that chat? Please let me know through all the usual means. I'm at Tom Clarkson F1, or you can use the hashtag F1 Beyond the Grid. And it seems many of you enjoyed last week's episode with David Coulthard. I thought it was vintage DC and so interesting to get his take on what separates the great drivers from the good ones. KJS summed it up well with this message. Hi TC, brilliant pod. What a great life coach DC would be. His insightful analysis of his own career and F1 is truly fascinating. His son is very lucky to have such a great mentor. His thoughts on the greats of the sport backs up that adage, you can't coach in what God left out. Well, thanks for sending that in, KJS. Great to hear from you, as it was everyone else who wrote in. We love your messages. Well, that's pretty much it for this week. Thank you, as ever, for listening. And don't forget to have a listen to F1's 2 other official podcasts, F1 Nation and F1 Explains. For now, though, F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by Formula One and Audioboom Studios. Until next time, keep it flat out.